Welcome to our new ISS offering, which is a combination of our inpatient and outpatient snapshot systems. This is the first screen you will see after logging into the system. It's a dashboard and is read-only but gives you basic numbers about the data in your database. There's a toggle at the top to switch between inpatient and outpatient. The information provided here is primary ranking, 8 charge bucket information, cases by quarter, and CMI. As you hover over the bars, you will see the pure numbers. Now I'm going to go to the Manage Tapes screen to cover how you're going to upload and download and manage your tapes. At the top, you'll see basic information about the tapes in your repository. This is a private, dedicated, HIPAA-secure repository, and it is dedicated to your facility, and not to be confused with the HSCRC data repository. At the top, you will see information about both of your data sets, providers, cases, minimum through date, maximum through date, and the number of tapes in your tape database. To upload a tape, you just click on the Browse button, traverse to your tape that you want to load, and then click the Upload button. Once this is completed, it will be loaded via the job queue and loaded into your own repository. To see the status of this job, click this link, and the job statistics will be here for everything that you run, the most latest job at the top. Once you see success, the job is completed. At this point, you can go back to Manage Tapes and review information about the tape or tapes you've just uploaded. We have filters built in here so that you can look at both tapes, just the inpatient tapes or the outpatient tapes, or you can do a search by typing in part or all the file name, and then you will see the files desired. Once you upload a tape, it will stay forever. So if you lose that tape on your local C drive, go ahead and download it again. We also do basic editing of the tapes when we're loading them. These are not being loaded into the database, but just into the tape repository. Part of the information included here in this report will be dropped cases and truncated data. So for example, if the Medicaid ID number is 18 digits long and it's supposed to be 11 digits long, we will truncate it and you'll have a warning in this download report. To look at the report for such a tape, just click the tape and do Download Report. Open it in Notepad, and it will show you the drop cases and/or truncated data elements, as shown here. In this example, the CPT modifier was larger than the defined value of 2 characters. Therefore, a warning is presented. This is the actual value here of what was submitted in that field. You can also delete tapes from here as well. Now we're going to go to the Create Job screen and cover how you would load your tapes and group the data. You have a few options here. You can load single tapes at a time without grouping. You can load single tapes with grouping, and you can group data without loading any tapes at all. And you can also group large amounts of data as much as you like. This will assist you when the Commission moves to new APR and CMS versions when you have to regroup your data. You will no longer have to reload your tapes. Just select the time period and reload all the data, and I will go through all of that right now. So to just load a tape without grouping it, it's as simple as checking this button and picking a tape. You want to go ahead and load this tape without grouping the data by clicking the Submit button. The portion at the bottom is not applicable, obviously, unless you're grouping the data while loading the tape. Once you click the Submit button, the tape load will be submitted to a job queue. The link right next to the Submit button is what you would click on to see the progress of the job you just submitted. The nice thing about the job queue is that you're free to close the browser and the jobs will continue to run. While the job runs, you will get information here about errors, which are not terribly important while the job's running, but afterwards they may be of interest. The screen will update in real time. Also, at the top, we have a Hide Parameters button, which hides the details of the job. So if you're interested in seeing that, just uncheck that button and you can see all the details about the job you've submitted. The tape file name, the from date and through date, and the data set. Now that the job is completed and the data has been loaded into your database. Now you're able to group it. You're also able to load and group simultaneously, but I'm just showing you all three steps in separate stages. In order to group data that has already been loaded, all you need to do is to click the Run Grouping button without clicking the Load Tape button. Click the type of groupings that you want to do here, and also click the versions here. For inpatient, obviously EAPG does not apply, but for outpatient it does, so I will select 3.14 and version 36. So when you group under version 36 and then group under version 37, it does not replace that data. Both groupings exist in the database, and at report time, you will be allowed to select the version desired. So now that we've checked the Run Grouping button, selected our versions of grouping and types of grouping, date, range, and provider, all we need to do is click Submit. Again, the job gets submitted to a job queue, and you're free to close your browser, and this grouping will continue. I'm going to click on the link here to go to the job queue and monitor the progress of the grouping. Again, the Hide Parameters button, if you uncheck it, will show you the details about the grouping. The provider, the from date, the through date, EAPG, APR, CMS, true or false, and then the versions of each and the data set you're grouping. So now that the job is complete, you're able to report on this data. If you're interested in looking at the logs for the grouping, just click on the job files, and these are all the 3M logs created during the grouping process. If you need any assistance in analyzing these logs or insights, please reach out to St. Paul, as we have much experience analyzing these logs. So now back at the Create Job screen, I'm going to show you how to load the tapes and group the data at the same time. I'm going to switch over to outpatient for this, and I'm going to pick a tape here in which I have 4 quarters of data. Again, click the Load Tape button, Run Grouping, select your types of groupings and your version. For inpatient, EAPG will not be available as it is not applicable. Again, I'll be clicking the Submit button here. It will create a job in the job queue that will load this data and then group it. You'll see here that 2 jobs were submitted, one that loads the data into the database and one that groups it. All the detailed information is available here about both of these jobs and can be hidden and hide parameters if you do not like to see this. Now that the jobs are complete, you can review the job file logs if you wish. I'm going to go back to the Create Job screen again to show you how to group data without loading tapes at all. So what you'll do here is you'll just click the Run Grouping button and not click the Load Tape button, and you're free to put whatever date range you like in here. For purposes of the demo, I'm just going to group 1 quarter of data here. I picked my provider number, my date range, my data set, and just selected Run Grouping. And again, this is going to group the data in your database, and you can group as many quarters or years of data as you like. I'm going to click Submit. I'd like to reiterate here how useful this will be when the commission, again, asks people to regroup the years of data under a new version. I'm going to click the Job Queue button here to monitor the status of the grouping. I'd also like to point out that grouping is 50 to 100% faster than Snapshot Inpatient Desktop, because we're doing simultaneous grouping of APR and CMS, and we're doing it with a relational database and a dedicated grouping server. So the grouping is now completed, and again, the job files from the grouping are available from the link here. Before I cover reporting, I'd like to move to the constraints area, which is what we are now calling inclusions. The reason for this is because you can now use your saved list as both inclusions or exclusions. These are the saved lists I currently have available to me. To add it as an inclusion, it's as simple as this, and you click Save. To add a save list as an exclusion, you just use the bottom button here, Add Exclusion. Click Save again, and the constraints are applied. I will show you this in the reporting, but these constraints you are not committed to. At report time, there will be a checkbox that you will be able to use these constraints or not. Now I will show you how to create constraints from the Edit Value List button. This is where you will manage value list or save list, as we call them. These are your existing lists over here. You can load them by clicking the load button. You can delete them by selecting it and clicking delete. And you can modify them here by adding more items, which I'll get to in a second, and then resave them under the same name or a new name. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to create a saved list using the APR severity of index. Once I select that field, I will click the load button, and the list view will be populated with the severity values. To add them to your select list, you just check them and add them. For this list, I'm going to create one of extreme severities. So to save this list, I go down next to the Save button and just give it a name and click the Save button. So now I've saved this list under the name Extreme, and it is accessible from your Edit List view. I'm going to use cardiac for the purposes of the demo moving forward. But to do that, I'm just going to remove the disposition of patient to home as an exclusion, and I'm going to leave cardiac as an inclusion. This cardiac inclusion list is just something I created with all DRGs that have the word heart and cardiac in it. So I'm going to click Save here to apply the constraints. Now we're going to move to the reports area. In the reports area, you will see summary reports and detail reports that are universal. You will see OP only reports, hybrid reports that are a combination of IP and OP, and when and if applicable, IP only reports. I'd also like to point out these information buttons here that will give you a little more information about the report in case you're not familiar with it. Now I'm going to demonstrate the APR and CMS weights report. I'm going to run the APR and CMS weights reports for an entire year. So I'm going to enter my year's date, inpatient data set, and I'm not going to use constraints. This is what I mentioned earlier about you not being committed to the constraint. You can use it or not. You can hover over it to see what potential constraint is in play so that you could apply it if you desire. I'm not going to use the constraint in this example. I've now selected a whole year and one provider number. I'm going to click Submit. It has now scanned the data for this date range here and presented versions in here that are in the data. So if you do not see a version in here, that means there's no data in this date range grouped under that version. So I'm going to select 36 and do Select Group. I'm going to use provider number and year quarter. What you know as saved report in the old Snapshot system is now going to be called saved grouping. So to save that grouping, all I need to do is click Save, give it a name, and then save it. I already have this list saved, so I'm not going to do that in this demo. I'm going to select the save list, and it will automatically apply. Now the report is rendered. This is the CMI report summarized by provider and year quarter. Cases, length of stay, average LOS, total charges, average charge, federal CMI, APR CMI, and the national CMI. The APR CMI is derived from the Maryland weights. These controls, as I like to call them, allow you to sort by single clicking. We'll rearrange these in descending order or ascending order by single clicking. These controls also act as filters. To use the filter, simply click the down arrow button and select the quarters that you desire. One of the features of our new reporting system is that you can drag data elements to either the X or Y axis as you desire. If I want to take the year and quarter and move it into the Y axis, that is all I have to do. I want to bring it back to the X axis, just pull it back in. If you decide you do not want one of these in the report, you can just move it out of the report completely. While it's out of the report, it still acts as a filter. For another example, for the APR weights report, I'd like to apply the constraints. So for this report, the constraint is APR DRGs that I'm calling cardiac that contain the word heart or cardiac. I'm going to use my save groupings of year provider and year quarter. And this is the report. And as you can see, there's a lot less cases because these constraints have been applied. Now I'm going to go back to the reports area and show the 8 charge bucket report. I'm going to do this for 1 month for inpatient, the fictional hospital 210098. I'm going to leave the groupings alone and just leave provider number there and then click the submit button. This is the 8 charge bucket report. It looks a little different than the Snapshot inpatient desktop report, but again, it has all the flexibility that I just described in the CMI weight report. You can drag descriptions wherever you want, X or Y axis, or you can remove things completely. I want to show off the export now. You now have the ability to export in Excel or CSV, and the export is such that what you see is what you get. I'm going to click the download button, and then we will get our export file. So this is the exported data from the report. As I said, it is what you see is what you get, with the additional criterion added to the top of the report. So now I'm going to move to the 31 charge bucket report. I'm going to run this for 1 month for one of our fictional hospitals. I'm going to use my save groupings and provider, year, quarter, and click submit. This is the 31 bucket report by provider, by quarter, obviously for only 1 quarter of data that I selected here. Again, I'd like to go over some of the features of the new reporting system. If you don't like a data element in the report, you may remove it by dragging it here. If you'd like to move something from the X to the Y axis, all you need to do is drag it to the Y axis. You want to move it back to the X axis and put it in a different position, you can shuffle it like that, or bring it back to its original view like that. So there's a lot of flexibility in these reports. We're trying to add what we refer to as Tableau style functionality. So now we're going to go to the federal ranking report. I'm going to select 1 month again, inpatient, 1 fictional hospital, click submit. The default view of this report in the original system was CMS DRG by provider. Click submit to render the report. In the federal ranking report, you will see cases, length of stay, charges, and federal CMI summarized by CMS DRG. Now we will proceed to the APR ranking report. Here we're going to use the same time period as before, inpatient, and select our 1 fictional hospital. Under groupings, we will select provider number and APR DRG, as this was the default view of the previous Snapshot inpatient report. Now I'll click the submit button to render the report. The APR ranking report is designed to show you CMIs by DRG. So now we're going to move on to the rate center report. I'm going to do this for 1 month, again for inpatient without complying constraints, and we'll just do this by provider number. This is the rate center report. At the bottom here, you have a rows per page control that you can use to enhance or expand your view. And this is the entire inpatient rate center report. The columns are total charges and units of service. Now we're going to cover the admission report. The original view of this report was by day of the week, so I'm going to remove the provider. 1 quarter, inpatient, 1 provider again. I'm going to submit. And what this report will tell you is how patients arrived at your hospital and by what day of the week. So emergency, chronic, delivery, other, newborn, urgent, scheduled, psychiatric, rehabilitation, all by day of the week. I should also point out that many of our reports have visualizations at the bottom. If you have any ideas for new visualizations, please share them with us. Now I'm going to move on to to the next report, which will be the tape compare report. This report will be very valuable in analyzing bad tapes when you get them replaced. So for example, if you have a tape that has 100% county code errors, then you create a new tape file that corrected that, you do not have to load the data to see if those corrections have been made. For purposes of the demonstration, I'm going to pick the exact same tape. What you will see here is comparisons of tape A versus tape B for all data elements. And in the scenario I just described, you would see your 100% of your county codes in error here or unknown, then you would see it corrected here. To make that more simple for you, we've added a show differences only column just to show the differences. But since I'm using the exact same tapes, I will not do that. Also, if you need to filter into a specific type of error, very easy to do using these controls. So now we're going to move on to the edit report. I'm going to do the outpatient edit report for the first quarter for one fictional hospital. This is the same error report that you receive from the commission when you submit your files. Again, you can use these filters to look at specific errors. And these edits are currently up to date through fiscal health. These are all of your errors. At the bottom, you'll see a control that shows you how many pages of errors that you have. And if you need to filter into anything, such as medical record number, account number, or an error type, simply click the arrow next to the column name, select the error or errors desired. Now we're going to move to the patient detail report. For the sake of speed, I'm just going to show you 1 month of data for inpatient for the detail. This is just basic information from the patients in your database. And this report was pulled directly from our original Snapshot inpatient desktop system. So now that we've covered the universal summary reports and the universal detail reports, I'm going to move over to the outpatient only summary reports. First report I'm going to cover is the revenue line item analysis. The HSCRC has made it a point of emphasis in previous data workshops that revenue line items be coded with both charges and CPT codes. What this report exposes is all revenue line items for which there is a charge but no CPT code. I'm going to run the report for 1 month and for outpatient, obviously. I'm going to submit. This is an example of the amount of money that the commission will not see in their methodologies if you do not submit these revenue line items to their satisfaction. The EAPG grouper cannot assign EAPGs to cases without CPT codes. Now we're going to move to the surgery analysis tool. This is a report we added in light of the COVID situation so that we can help hospitals analyze the struggles they are now facing. For now, what we've added to the report is a custom nature of surgery control. Since the COVID crisis has hit, emergency procedures continue and elective procedures will not. This will give you the ability to analyze your market gain and market loss due to the crisis. We are also in the process of adding a reserve flag control here as well to assist you in analyzing your telehealth cases. So now we're going to move to the hybrid summary reports, the only one of which we have is the reconciliation summary. I'm going to select 1 month of data here, our fictional hospital, and click submit. The hybrid reconciliation report has all the columns required by the commission. It also breaks it down into inpatient and outpatient and combine as the commission requires as well. So now we're going to move on to the export area. First thing I'm going to cover is the flat export, which is the export that you currently have in the Snapshot desktop system. You'll select your date range, your data set, your hospital, your format. We've added access to the formats as well, so you're able to get the limited data in a CSV, Excel format, or Access format. Select your version of APR and EAPG if applicable. And I'm going to show you here how to save a list and then retrieve a list. So right here is where your save lists are. I have none right now. Here is where your save lists are. I've created a few sample save lists for my own purposes. I'm going to show you now how to create one of your own. I'm going to randomly select a number of fields. All you need to do is click the Add button, give it a name here, and then click Save. And now you'll see the save list up here for future retrieval at the bottom. Once your fields are selected, all you need to do is click Submit to export the data. Detail level exports get submitted to the job queue, and as such, you do not have to wait for them to finish. You can also close your browser while this is running. Now that I've gone to the job queue, the files are already created. I selected CSV, so I'm going to show you the CSV version of this. And that's the one-line export from the CSV. Now I'm going to show you the Excel export, pretty much the same as before, except I'm going to use my save list here and click Load. Here's where you will load and delete list. You can also load lists and then modify them and save them under either the same name or a new name. I'm going to show the Excel export. I'm going to click Submit. And at the same time, I'm going to generate the Access export. And they'll both go into the job queue and run one after the other. So now I'm going to go to the job statistics queue, and I submitted 2 jobs here. One to export the data in Excel format. Right here, we'll look at that. This is the Excel format of the data. I've also created an Access database version of it. And this is the Access version of the flat export. Now I'm going to cover what we are calling a normalized export. This is designed to be exported into a relational database or a tool such as Tableau. We've divided the data up in our own database into logical tables for performance reasons. What this export will do is not only create these data files in separate physical files, it will create linking IDs that will link your master table to all the patient's relevant data items, such as patient data, clinical data, revenue, and so forth. I'm going to click Submit, and it'll get submitted as a job in the queue. If anyone is using Tableau or anything like that and needs assistance in setting up their table relationships, St. Paul would be happy to help. So you click on the job files link to see the files. No matter what format of data you ask for, CSVs will be created because these need to be created in order to create the Access database. But ultimately, you only need to download the Access database. In addition, if you want to download all of these files at once, you can just click the Get All in Zip File button to get them all in one zip file. For purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to show you the Access database. This is the Access database, and the IP master table is the master that contains the master ID that will link you to that patient's other data elements in the other tables. So that concludes the exporting portion of the demonstration. I'd like to go over the account administration a little bit, and some of the features we've added there. You can add users that are administrators, and the administrators get to create other users, and administrators obviously can group data and report on data. If someone is not an administrator, they can do grouping of data and reporting of data, but not create new users. You can also uncheck the grouping and delete box to disallow them from grouping. If you have analysts using this system, this will allow you to prohibit them from grouping data. In addition, if you're a health system with multiple providers, we've added the ability to limit users to one or more of those providers. You do that by taking the all out of here and replacing it with the provider or providers desired, separated by commas. I'm not going to save this for purposes of the demo. Next to the administration link, you'll see an account link to manage your own account. This is obviously needed for non-administrative users. At the top, you're going to see a contact button so that you can leave us feedback at any time you like. Feel free to call us at any time if it's too much to type in. We'll be happy to talk to you.